Every insult, every threat, every illegal act, I documented it all while smiling and saying, "Yes, ma'am." For 18 months, Melissa harassed my family, demolished our century-old barn, and filed 6 frivolous lawsuits trying to force us off land we'd owned since 1924. This Silicon Valley transplant thought she could bully some backward rancher into selling cheap so her development company could build luxury condos on our property. What this entitled HOA president didn't realize was that my great-grandfather didn't just build our ranch, he also built the dam that keeps her $2,300,000 lakefront mansion from sitting next to a muddy creek. See, federal infrastructure agreements from 1943 are funny things. They give you authority that trumps every local law, every HOA rule, and every county court order. And when someone spends over a year committing federal crimes while trying to steal your family's legacy, well, that's when you stop playing defense and start teaching lessons about underestimating the wrong rancher. Where are you watching this from, by the way? Drop a comment below, because you're about to see what happens when old school justice meets modern day Karen, and I promise it's more satisfying than anything you've seen on social media. Let me paint you a picture of Whispering Pines Valley, Montana. Population 847 souls, nestled around the pristine waters of Lake Serenity like a postcard from a simpler time. The morning mist rises off that lake with the smell of pine needles and possibility, carrying the sound of loons calling across waters so clear you can see the bottom 20 feet down. My family's been here since 1924. When my great-grandfather Samuel Morrison staked his claim and built the Morrison Ranch with nothing but determination and calloused hands. That barn Melissa destroyed? Samuel carved every beam by hand, raised it with the help of neighbors who understood that when you build something to last, you build it with your community. But here's the thing about Lake Serenity. It's not exactly natural. Back in '43, Samuel worked with the Roosevelt administration to build the dam system that created this paradise. The taste of that lake water is crisp and clean because 3 generations of Morrisons have maintained those dam controls with the precision of a Swiss watch. I'm 52 now, work as a hydraulic engineer for the county water district, and after my divorce last year, my teenage daughter Emma spends summers with me. That barn was her sanctuary, the acoustics were perfect for practicing violin, and the old wooden rafters would echo with Bach and Beethoven like a concert hall built by angels. Enter Melissa Thornfield, 45, former Silicon Valley executive who bought the most expensive lakefront property 18 months ago for $2.3 million, cash. She talks like a corporate PowerPoint presentation and treats locals like quaint obstacles to her vision. Her husband Marcus is a lawyer who speaks exclusively in legal threats, and together they've been recruiting other wealthy transplants to join the HOA board. The first sign of trouble came when Melissa declared my century-old barn violated new aesthetic standards and disrupted property sight lines. The smell of old hay and motor oil that had defined my childhood was suddenly an affront to her sensibilities. She discovered the barn was never formally permitted because permits didn't exist in 1924, and used this technicality like a legal sledgehammer. The HOA vote was 6-1 to order demolition. I was the only original resident left on the board. Emma's violin practice had become the soundtrack of defiance, her music floating across the valley every evening like a reminder of what we were losing. The texture of those worn wooden tool handles, passed down through generations, told the story of honest work and family pride. The taste of dust and defeat filled my mouth as the demolition crew arrived that morning. But here's what really stung. This wasn't just about aesthetics. I started noticing a pattern. Every multi-generational family in the valley was facing some kind of HOA harassment. The Chens got cited for their vegetable garden. The Rodriguez family was fined for their excessive truck repairs. The Patel's roadside fruit stand suddenly violated commercial activity rules. Melissa's Facebook group, Whispering Pines Beautification, was actually a hit list of local families she wanted gone. Her posts read like a real estate developer's wish list. Once we clear out these unsightly agricultural activities, property values will soar. The financial hit was immediate. That barn housed $40,000, 0 cents worth of ranch equipment and vintage vehicles, including my grandfather's restored 1952 Ford that Emma was planning to drive to prom. But the emotional cost was deeper. Watching that structure collapse, Felt like watching my family's DNA being erased from the landscape. Emma cried that night, not just for the barn, but for what it represented. "Dad," she said, "it's like they're trying to delete our history." The kid was right. This wasn't about property values. It was about erasing the people who built this place so newcomers could pretend they discovered paradise. That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for my barn. I was fighting for the soul of Whispering Pines Valley, and I had advantages that Melissa couldn't possibly understand. Advantages that went back 80 years to a handshake deal between my great-grandfather and the federal government. The real war was just beginning. Melissa didn't waste time celebrating her barn victory. Within a week, she filed noise complaints about my 6 a.m. ranch work, claiming it violated HOA's newly instituted quiet hours from 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. The woman who'd never heard a rooster crow in her life was suddenly an expert on rural noise ordinances. Her lawyer husband Marcus sent me a certified letter that read like a legal ransom note. $500, 0 cents, daily fines for disturbing the peace of the community. The paper had that expensive law firm letterhead smell, all cotton fiber and condescension. Marcus's signature looked like it was designed to intimidate rather than communicate. But here's where Melissa made her first strategic error. She started documenting everything on social media, posting photos of my unsightly ranch equipment with captions about bringing civilization to the wilderness. Her Tesla would cruise past my property at odd hours, her phone pressed against the passenger window like she was conducting surveillance on enemy territory. That's when I decided to do some digging of my own. I spent 3 evenings at the county courthouse, pulling property records and deed transfers until my eyes burned from the microfilm reader. The taste of stale courthouse coffee became my fuel as I traced the paper trail of Melissa's land acquisition. What I found made my blood run cold. Her property had been sold to her by the Hendricks family, but old Tom Hendricks hadn't wanted to sell. The records showed a suspicious sequence. Property tax assessment mysteriously tripled, then a distressed sale to a holding company, then an immediate transfer to Melissa at below-market rates. But here's the legal nugget that changed everything. Buried in my family's original deed was a clause granting perpetual agricultural use rights that predated any HOA formation by 70 years. Agricultural use rights are like mineral rights. They run with the land and can't be voted away by newcomers. One sentence takeaway: when you inherit land, you inherit rights that are often more valuable than the property itself. I started connecting with other longtime residents, and the pattern became clear. Every original family was facing coordinated harassment designed to force them out. Mrs. Chen, the retired teacher, had been keeping detailed notes on every HOA meeting. Her handwriting was precise as a legal brief, as she documented each suspicious vote and manufactured crisis. The mini-twist came when Melissa escalated to reporting my unpermitted water usage to the state environmental agency. She claimed my cattle were polluting the lake and demanded an immediate investigation. The irony was delicious. The woman was attacking the very family that kept her lake filled with clean water. But I had an ace up my sleeve. As a hydraulic engineer, I knew exactly how much water my ranch used, and I had decades of documentation proving our conservation efforts. More importantly, I started researching the lake's water flow patterns and made a discovery that would change everything. Lake Serenity exists because of a dam system my great-grandfather helped design. The sound of water flowing through those controls was like a mechanical heartbeat that had kept this valley alive for 80 years. Every morning, I'd check the gauges and listen to the steady rhythm of the pumps, never realizing I was holding the keys to the kingdom. Emma became my research assistant, her teenage energy channeled into investigating property records and social media patterns. "Dad," she said one evening looking up from her laptop, "Melissa posted about maximizing lakefront investment potential the same day she filed the complaint against you. This isn't about noise, it's about money." The kid was brilliant. She'd figured out what took me weeks to understand. I started building a case file, documenting every HOA action with the methodical precision of an engineer. Photos, timestamps, legal correspondence, everything went into manila folders that grew thicker by the day. The local diner became our unofficial resistance headquarters, where ranch families would gather over coffee that tasted like liquid determination mixed with spite. Mrs. Chen revealed that Marcus had been pressuring the county assessor about reassessing rural properties to reflect current market values. Translation, they wanted to tax us out of our land. The smell of corruption was stronger than diesel exhaust from the construction equipment that seemed to be perpetually improving HOA properties. But the real power shift came when I discovered the water rights documentation. My great-grandfather hadn't just helped build the dam, he'd negotiated federal protections that gave the Morrison family permanent authority over the water system. The papers were yellowed with age, but legally binding, filed with both county and federal agencies. Melissa could threaten all she wanted, but she was attacking the very family that controlled her property's existence. The woman who thought she was playing chess was actually playing checkers against someone who'd inherited the entire board. If Melissa thought her noise complaints were clever, her next move was pure financial warfare. My property taxes mysteriously jumped from $1,200.00 to $8,400.00 annually, a seven-fold increase that smelled like backroom dealing and selective enforcement. The county assessor's office claimed it was part of a comprehensive market adjustment, but somehow only my property and two other ranch families got reassessed. Simultaneously, the HOA voted to require an architectural review for any ranch maintenance, complete with $5,000.00 application fees. Want to fix a fence? $5,000, please. Replace a barn door? Another $5,000. Marcus's law firm, conveniently, was the only qualified reviewer for agricultural modifications. But Melissa's psychological warfare was even more disturbing. She started parking her Tesla at the end of my driveway during my morning coffee breaks, filming me through the windshield like I was some kind of wildlife exhibit. Her phone would be pressed against the glass, recording my every move for what she called her property security documentation. The taste of my morning coffee turned bitter with the realization that I was being hunted in my own home. That's when my engineering background became my secret weapon. I started studying the lake's water flow patterns with the same precision I used for county projects. Late nights in my workshop, surrounded by hydrological charts and flow calculations, I began to understand something that would change the entire dynamic. Lake Serenity wasn't just artificially maintained. It was completely dependent on a dam system that my great-grandfather had helped design in 1943. The mechanical hum of those pumps wasn't just background noise. It was the sound of my family's legacy keeping Melissa's investment afloat. I pulled the original federal documentation from the National Archives, documents that smelled like old leather and government bureaucracy. What I found was pure gold. Water rights dating back 80 years, giving the Morrison family key maintenance contracts and operational authority over the entire system. Here's the legal nugget that changed everything. Water rights in the West are like finding gold, and they're often worth more than the land itself. One sentence takeaway: control the water, control everything that depends on it. The mini twist came when Emma's detective work uncovered Marcus's dirty dealing. She found county records showing his law firm received a $50,000.00 consulting fee from Mountain Vista Development Company the same week my taxes got reassessed. The timestamps were damning. Payment on Monday, reassessment filed on Wednesday. "Dad, look at this," Emma said, her laptop screen glowing in the workshop light. Mountain Vista Development had options to buy distressed properties throughout Whispering Pines Valley. The company was betting on families like mine being forced to sell due to financial pressure. This wasn't about property values or community standards. This was about land speculation, pure and simple. I started connecting dots with the methodical precision of a crime scene investigator. Mrs. Chen revealed that 3 other families had received similar tax reassessments, all properties that Mountain Vista had flagged for potential acquisition. The pattern was clear. Create financial pressure, force sales, then develop luxury properties for wealthy transplants. But here's where Melissa's plan had a fatal flaw. The lake that made these properties valuable existed entirely at the discretion of my family's water rights. Every morning when I checked the dam controls, feeling the smooth metal of levers worn by 3 generations of Morrison hands, I was touching the heart of her entire scheme. The sound of morning mist rising from Lake Serenity was like whispered encouragement from the past, reminding me that my great-grandfather had built protections into this system for exactly this kind of threat. The taste of lake air carried hints of pine and possibility, but also the metallic tang of coming confrontation. I began documenting water quality throughout the valley, using my engineering connections to conduct independent testing. The results were startling. Melissa's own septic system was leaching into the lake she claimed to protect. Her environmental concerns were projection at its finest. Emma started a social media campaign highlighting the valley's real history, posting photos of Samuel Morrison building the original dam, of 3 generations maintaining the water system that kept the community alive. Her posts were getting thousands of shares from rural communities facing similar gentrification pressure. Meanwhile, Melissa's cleanup day publicity stunt backfired spectacularly when environmental reporters started investigating the lake's history. They discovered that the Morrison family had been practicing sustainable water management decades before it became trendy, protecting wildlife habitats and maintaining ecological balance through careful stewardship. The irony was delicious. The woman trying to destroy us was depending on our family's environmental expertise to maintain her property value. As I sat in my workshop that night, looking at 80 years of water management records, I realized that my great-grandfather had been playing a longer game than anyone understood. He hadn't just built a dam, he'd built an insurance policy against exactly the kind of threat we were facing. Melissa's desperation was starting to show. She filed a lawsuit claiming my ranch created environmental hazards that threatened lake water quality, the nuclear option in her campaign to destroy my family. The lawsuit read like environmental fiction, claiming my cattle were polluting the pristine waters that 3 generations of Morrisons had protected. But Melissa's real genius was in media manipulation. She contacted Channel 7 News with a story about concerned citizens worried about outdated agricultural practices threatening their community's natural resources. The reporter, a young woman from the city who'd probably never seen a cow up close, ate up every word. Then came the Lake Serenity Cleanup Day, a photo op disguised as environmental activism. Melissa organized volunteers in matching t-shirts to pick up trash that mysteriously appeared overnight near my property line. The smell of fresh printed promotional materials mixed with manufactured outrage as cameras captured concerned citizens protecting their lake from That's when I decided to fight fire with facts. Using my engineering connections, I arranged independent water quality testing throughout the lake. The results would have made Melissa choke on her organic kombucha and bentonite. My ranch wasn't polluting anything. In fact, our sustainable grazing practices were actually improving water quality by preventing erosion and filtering runoff naturally. But the real shocker was what we found near Melissa's property. Her designer septic system, installed by the cheapest bidder despite her mansion's price tag, was leaching directly into the lake she claimed to protect. The irony tasted like vindication mixed with disgust. I started documenting every environmental violation on HOA board members' properties with the methodical precision of a crime scene photographer. GPS coordinates, timestamps, photographic evidence, all building toward a case file that would make federal prosecutors smile. Here's the legal nugget that saved my bacon. Environmental lawsuits are double-edged swords. The plaintiff better have clean hands. One sentence takeaway: when someone accuses you of environmental crimes, investigate their own backyard first. The mini twist came during my research into the original dam construction documents. I was looking for ammunition to defend against Melissa's lawsuit when I found something that changed the entire game. My great-grandfather hadn't just helped build the dam. He'd insisted on specific federal protections that gave the Morrison family ultimate authority over the water system. The papers were brittle with age, but legally bulletproof. If the dam valves closed, Lake Serenity would become a muddy creek in 48 hours. Every mansion, every resort plan, every property value in the valley depended on my family's continued stewardship. Emma was the first to grasp the implications. "Dad," she said, looking up from the federal documents spread across our kitchen table, "you don't just maintain the dam. You control whether the lake exists at all." The kid was right. My great-grandfather had built the ultimate insurance policy against exactly this kind of threat. Meanwhile, Melissa's cleanup day was attracting genuine environmental groups who started asking uncomfortable questions about the lake's history. Real conservationists quickly realized that the Morrison family had been practicing sustainable water management since before Melissa was born. The sound of lake water lapping against my dock carried whispered encouragement from generations past. Every morning I'd walk down to check the water levels, feeling the smooth wooden planks worn by decades of family footsteps, understanding for the first time that I wasn't just a caretaker, I was a guardian. Local families started coordinating their legal defense, pooling resources to fight the coordinated attack on our community. The diner became our command center, where ranch families would share intelligence over coffee that tasted like liquid rebellion. Mrs. Chen's detailed meeting notes became evidence in our growing case against HOA overreach. Melissa's biggest mistake was underestimating the power of social media in the hands of a motivated teenager. Emma's documentation of our environmental stewardship went viral in rural communities nationwide, attracting attention from land rights advocacy groups and environmental justice organizations. The environmental lawsuit became Melissa's liability when her own violations surfaced. Channel 7 News ran a follow-up story about the concerned citizen whose septic system was actually polluting the lake she claimed to protect. The reporter's tone shifted from sympathetic to skeptical as the facts emerged. But the real power shift happened when I realized that every property around the lake depended on infrastructure my family controlled. Melissa had been trying to destroy the very people who kept her investment valuable. It was like attacking the foundation while standing on the roof. As I sat by the lake that evening, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and possibility, I understood that my great-grandfather had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. He'd built protections that would outlast any HOA, any lawsuit, any threat to our family's legacy. The war was far from over, but for the first time since this started, I held all the cards. The game-changing discovery came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, buried in a box of federal documents that had been gathering dust in my workshop for decades. I was cross-referencing water rights with environmental protection laws when I found papers that made my hands shake, literally shake as I read them. The 1943 federal agreement didn't just grant my family maintenance contracts. It classified the dam system as critical infrastructure, essential to regional water security. Any attempt to remove or restrict the dam operator's access wasn't just illegal, it was a federal crime, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. My great-grandfather Samuel hadn't just been building a dam, he'd been building a fortress of legal protection that would span generations. The papers smelled like old leather and government authority, each page stamped with official seals that carried the weight of the Roosevelt administration's wartime infrastructure priorities. But here's the clause that changed everything. The Morrison family held perpetual operational authority over water flow, meaning we didn't just maintain the dam, we legally controlled the entire lake's existence. The federal backing came from a time when America understood that critical infrastructure couldn't be subject to local political pressure. The legal nugget that saved our legacy, federal infrastructure agreements from the 1940th are like constitutional amendments. They trump all local ordinances. One sentence takeaway: when your great-grandfather made a deal with the federal government, that handshake carries more weight than any HOA board vote. Emma's contribution to this revelation was brilliant. While I was drowning in legal documents, she was conducting digital detective work that would make the FBI proud. Her laptop screen glowed in the workshop darkness as she uncovered Melissa's social media posts about monetizing lake access and creating Lake Serenity Resort, LLC. "Dad, look at this," Emma said, her voice tight with excitement. She'd found property records showing that Marcus's law firm represented Mountain Vista Development, the same company that had been systematically buying up distressed properties throughout the valley. The smoking gun was a planning document Emma found in county records. Mountain Vista's development proposal included a private resort, exclusive lake access, and residential property starting at $3 million, 0 cents. The timeline was aggressive. They needed to clear out existing residents within 6 months to break ground by spring. Suddenly, everything made sense. The barn demolition, the harassment campaign, the environmental lawsuit. It was all designed to force my family off land that anchored the entire development scheme. Melissa wasn't just some petty HOA tyrant. She was the advanced scout for a coordinated land grab. But she'd made a fatal miscalculation. Her entire investment, her husband's legal fees, the development company's timeline, everything depended on maintaining a lake that existed entirely at my family's discretion. The historical context made this even more powerful. Samuel Morrison had insisted on federal protections after watching other ranching families pushed off their land by railroad companies and mining interests. He'd seen what happened when local politics could override property rights. and he'd built safeguards that would protect future generations. Mrs. Chen's detailed HOA meeting notes revealed that Melissa had been planning this campaign for over a year, recruiting board members and positioning allies before making her first move. The coordinated nature of the attacks wasn't coincidence. It was evidence of conspiracy. The community impact was immediate once word spread. Longtime residents realized they weren't facing random HOA overreach but organized gentrification designed to erase their heritage and replace it with artificial luxury. The taste of that realization was bitter as black coffee, but it unified families who had been fighting isolated battles. Media interest exploded when environmental groups learned that a century-old sustainable water management system was being threatened by resort development. The story became a perfect symbol of corporate greed versus environmental stewardship, authentic heritage versus manufactured luxury. But Melissa's vulnerability was now completely exposed. Her property value, her resort plans, her entire financial future depended on a lake that could disappear with the turn of a valve controlled by the family she'd been trying to destroy. The irony was perfect. The woman who thought she was playing chess had actually been playing checkers against someone who owned the entire board. The Morrison Ranch kitchen became War Room Central. Maps and documents spread across the table like a general's battle plan. The smell of strong coffee mixed with the mustiness of 80-year-old federal papers as our core team gathered, me, Emma, Mrs. Chen, and 3 other displaced ranch families whose properties were in Mountain Vista's crosshairs. "Here's what we're dealing with," I said, pointing to a timeline Emma had created on her laptop. "Melissa isn't just some power-hungry HOA president. She's the advanced team for a development scheme that needs us gone to succeed." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let Melissa continue her aggressive tactics while we documented every violation, every overreach, every piece of evidence that would prove organized conspiracy. Like a controlled burn, we'd let her feed the fire that would ultimately consume her. Mrs. Chen, bless her retired teacher's heart, had been keeping notes that read like a legal brief. Her handwriting was precise as court stenography as she documented each suspicious vote and manufactured crisis. "I've got 18 months of HOA meeting minutes," she said, "and the pattern is clear as daylight." My engineering background became our secret weapon for technical preparation. I conducted a full systems check of the dam controls, ensuring every valve and monitoring device functioned with Swiss watch precision. The mechanical hum of the equipment sounded like a heartbeat keeping our valley alive, each gauge reading recorded and time-stamped for legal documentation. The water flow modeling took 3 weeks of computer simulations, but the results were devastating for Melissa's plans. If the dam valves closed, Lake Serenity would drain to 30% capacity within 48 hours, revealing mudflats that smelled like rotting vegetation and broken dreams. Property values would crater faster than a stock market crash. Emma became our social media strategist, her teenage digital fluency channeled into telling the real story of Whispering Pines Valley. Her laptop keys clicked like digital drumbeats of revolution as she posted historical photos and family stories that went viral in rural communities nationwide. "The trick," Emma explained, "is showing people that this isn't just about us. Every small community faces the same threats from people who see heritage as an obstacle to profit." Our legal preparation was methodical as a crime scene investigation. Every HOA action, every threat, every violation got documented and time-stamped. The manila folders grew thicker by the day, each piece of evidence adding weight to our case like stones in a scale of justice. Here's the knowledge nugget that became our foundation. In legal warfare, the best defense is a perfectly documented offense. One sentence takeaway: when someone's trying to destroy you systematically, systematic documentation becomes your most powerful weapon. The expert witnesses lined up like dominoes ready to fall. Environmental engineers who understood sustainable water management, water rights attorneys who specialized in federal infrastructure law, dam inspectors who could testify about the Morrison family's exemplary stewardship record. But the psychological game was just as important as the legal strategy. We adopted a rope-a-dope approach, absorbing Melissa's attacks while building an overwhelming counter case. Every family she targeted became another ally in our corner, every overreach adding evidence to our conspiracy case. The local diner evolved into resistance headquarters, where ranch families coordinated strategy over coffee that tasted like liquid determination. The conversations buzzed with excitement as people realized they weren't fighting isolated battles, but part of a larger movement to protect rural heritage. Federal angle preparation involved researching infrastructure protection laws dating back to the New Deal. The papers were yellowed with age but legally bulletproof, establishing precedents that would make federal prosecutors salivate. Any interference with critical infrastructure operations violated multiple federal statutes. Our community organizing took on the energy of a grassroots political campaign. Historical documentation efforts uncovered photographs and stories spanning a century of sustainable valley stewardship. Emma led social media campaigns that reached hundreds of thousands of views, turning local harassment into a national symbol of gentrification resistance. The knowledge nuggets we prepared for media interviews would educate our audience. Water rights are separate from property rights. You can own land but not control the water under it. Environmental lawsuits require clean hands. If you're polluting while suing someone else, you lose credibility. Federal infrastructure agreements from the 1940s often include enforcement mechanisms that supersede local laws. Building relationships with regional media became crucial as the story attracted attention from land rights advocacy groups. Reporters started understanding that this wasn't just local drama, but a perfect case study of corporate manipulation versus authentic community stewardship. The dam valve testing was almost ceremonial. My hands on controls, worn smooth by 3 generations of Morrison stewardship, feeling the power to drain a lake that supported million-dollar properties. The irony was perfect. The family Melissa was trying to destroy controlled the very infrastructure that made her investment valuable. As we finalized our strategy, the taste of victory was already sweet on our tongues. Melissa's desperation started showing in ways that would have been comical if they weren't so malicious. My ranch equipment began suffering mysterious damage. Hydraulic lines cut, fence posts loosened, gates left open so cattle could wander onto county roads. The smell of diesel fuel and vandalism hung in the morning air like a toxic fog of escalating warfare. The legal harassment reached absurd levels. Marcus's law firm was filing frivolous lawsuits weekly, each one designed to drain my resources rather than win in court. Noise violations for my rooster crowing, zoning complaints about my mailbox placement, environmental concerns about my compost pile. The paper trail of legal threats could have wallpapered my workshop. But Melissa's social warfare was the most insidious attack. She started spreading rumors about my mental stability and dangerous obsession with the dam, painting me as an unhinged extremist who might sabotage the community's water supply. Her Facebook posts read like psychological warfare, designed to isolate me from neighbors who might otherwise offer support. The economic pressure was coordinated and vicious. Local businesses started refusing service to my family. Suddenly, our account at the feed store was under review. The hardware store couldn't order parts for my equipment, and even the coffee shop made Emma feel unwelcome. The taste of community rejection was bitter as burnt coffee grounds. That's when my engineering background became a counterintelligence operation. I installed a sophisticated monitoring system around my property, using the same precision sensors I employed for county water projects. The electronic hum of surveillance equipment blended with the mechanical rhythm of the dam controls, creating a symphony of technological protection. The results were pure gold. My security cameras captured Marcus sneaking around my property at 2 a.m., photographing equipment and checking for vulnerabilities. The night vision footage showed him trying to access the dam maintenance road, clearly searching for ways to interfere with the water system operations. Here's the knowledge nugget that changed everything. Sometimes the best response to harassment is a detailed investigation of the harasser. One sentence takeaway. When someone's attacking you systematically, they're usually hiding systematic crimes of their own. The mini twist came when Emma's detective work uncovered financial connections that would make federal prosecutors smile. She found cash payments from Mountain Vista Development to local troublemakers, the same guys who'd been damaging my equipment. The money trail was documented through social media posts where they flashed unexpected cash and bragged about easy side jobs. "Dad, look at this," Emma said, her laptop screen glowing with bank transaction records she'd cross-referenced with social media activity. "They're not even trying to hide the payments. These guys are getting paid to harass us." But Melissa's strategic error was escalating to federal crime territory. She attempted to physically block my access to the dam maintenance road, claiming it was HOA property. despite federal documentation proving otherwise. Her Tesla parked across the access gate like a very expensive barricade, while she filmed herself protecting community resources from unauthorized access. The irony was delicious. Interfering with critical infrastructure maintenance violated multiple federal laws, turning what started as civil harassment into a potential felony case. My security system captured every moment of Marcus physically blocking the access gate while Melissa provided running commentary for her social media audience. Federal interest intensified when dam security became an infrastructure protection issue. The county water district supervisors started asking pointed questions about HOA interference with essential services. The smell of federal investigation was in the air like ozone before a thunderstorm. Community rallying reached a tipping point as Melissa's sabotage campaign backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating me, her increasingly desperate tactics united the valley against HOA overreach. Ranch families who'd been fighting isolated battles realized they were facing a coordinated enemy that required coordinated resistance. Local news coverage shifted from Melissa's environmental concerns to investigating the mysterious harassment campaign targeting multi-generational families. Channel 7's reporter, the same one who'd initially bought Melissa's story, started asking uncomfortable questions about the coincidental timing of attacks on specific properties. Emma's social media documentation went viral in rural communities nationwide, turning our local fight into a symbol of resistance against gentrification. Her posts attracted attention from land rights organizations and environmental justice groups who understood that authentic stewardship was being attacked by artificial development. The psychological toll was showing on Melissa and Marcus. Their coordination was becoming sloppy, their attacks more desperate than strategic. The taste of their panic was sweet as honey, especially when federal agents started asking questions about infrastructure security. My emotional journey deepened as I channeled fury into systematic evidence collection. Seeing Emma hurt by community rejection triggered a protective instinct that transformed anger into laser-focused determination. Every act of sabotage became another piece of evidence in our growing federal case. The ranch morning air still tasted like freedom under siege, but now it also carried the metallic tang of approaching justice. Melissa's final gambit was as desperate as it was revealing. She showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning with a briefcase full of cash, $500,000, 0 cents in crisp hundreds, offering to buy my property for relocation somewhere more suitable. The smell of new money mixed with expensive perfume and barely concealed panic as she laid out the bills like a poker player going all in with a losing hand. "Think about Emma's future," she said, her corporate smile cracking at the edges. "This money could pay for any college, any life she wants away from all this unpleasantness." What she didn't realize was that my security system was recording every word, every gesture, every bill she counted onto my kitchen table. The bribe money came from Mountain Vista Development, the same company Marcus's law firm represented, proving the conspiracy we'd been documenting for months. When I refused, Melissa's mask finally slipped completely. "I will destroy your family's reputation permanently," she hissed, her voice losing all pretense of neighborly concern. "By the time I've finished, no one in this valley will remember your name without spitting." The nuclear threat came within 24 hours. Melissa filed a restraining order claiming I'd made terroristic threats about shutting down the lake and endangering the entire community's water supply. Marcus's legal filing read like fiction, painting me as an unstable extremist who posed a clear and present danger to public safety. The restraining order hearing was a masterclass in legal theater. Melissa testified with crocodile tears about my veiled threats and obsessive behavior, claiming she feared for her family's safety. Her performance would have won an Oscar if the audience hadn't known she was the one conducting a systematic harassment campaign. But here's where federal law trumped local drama. You can't get a restraining order against someone performing their federally mandated job. One sentence takeaway: Federal Infrastructure Authority supersedes all local court orders, including restraining orders filed by desperate HOA presidents. The mini-twist was Marcus's professional suicide. His representation of both the HOA and Mountain Vista Development created a conflict of interest so blatant that the State Bar Association opened an investigation before the restraining order hearing ended. Legal malpractice, money laundering, and conspiracy charges were piling up faster than snow in a Montana blizzard. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit got interested when they traced the bribery money through 3 shell companies back to offshore accounts. The taste of federal justice was sweet as mountain honey as agents started asking pointed questions about RICO violations and organized racketeering. Meanwhile, I maintained strategic silence, letting Melissa's desperation speak louder than any words I could offer. Every media interview, every social media post, every legal filing added evidence to the federal case building against her organization. The sound of her own voice was becoming her worst enemy. Emma's coming-of-age moment arrived when she agreed to be interviewed by Channel 7 News. My teenage daughter, once shy about speaking publicly, articulated the fight against gentrification with wisdom that made seasoned activists proud. "They're not just trying to steal our land," she said, looking directly into the camera. "They're trying to steal our history, our identity, our right to exist in the place our family built." The development scheme's exposure created a domino effect throughout the valley. The FBI investigation expanded to include every property purchase, every suspicious tax assessment, every coordinated attack on multi-generational families. Mountain Vista's financing structure revealed offshore money laundering and tax evasion schemes that made the local harassment look like amateur hour. Community transformation accelerated as ranch families organized to run candidates for county positions. Mrs. Chen announced her campaign for county commissioner, armed with 18 months of detailed notes documenting corruption. The local diner buzzed with political energy that smelled like coffee and revolution. Emma's social media influence reached hundreds of thousands of followers, her documentation becoming the template for rural communities fighting similar gentrification schemes nationwide. Her essay about water rights won the state high school competition, earning her scholarship offers from environmental law programs across the country. The courthouse hallways echoed with the footsteps of federal agents, environmental prosecutors, and civil rights attorneys, who understood that this case would set precedents for protecting rural heritage against predatory development. The taste of institutional support was as refreshing as mountain spring water after years of fighting alone. But the real power shift came when Melissa realized that every attack she'd launched had backfired spectacularly. Her environmental lawsuit exposed her own pollution violations. Her harassment campaign created federal evidence of organized crime. Her bribery attempt triggered money laundering investigations that threatened to destroy everyone connected to Mountain Vista development. As I stood by the lake that evening, watching sunset paint the water in shades of gold and vindication, I could almost hear my great-grandfather's laughter echoing across the valley. He'd built protections that were finally being tested, and they were holding strong against forces he'd anticipated but never lived to see. The war was nearly over, but the most satisfying battle was yet to come. The annual Whispering Pines Town Hall meeting had never seen anything like this. The high school gymnasium was packed beyond capacity, with residents, media crews, and federal agents who'd driven up from Billings. The air crackled with electric tension as our entire community gathered for what everyone knew would be the final confrontation. Melissa arrived fashionably late in her Tesla, flanked by Marcus and 2 lawyers from his firm. She wore a designer suit that probably cost more than most families' monthly mortgage, her confidence radiating the artificial energy of someone playing their last desperate card. The click of her heels on the gymnasium floor sounded like a countdown to Judgment Day. "Ladies and gentlemen," Melissa began, her PowerPoint slides projecting onto the wall behind her, "we're here to discuss a clear and present danger to our community's safety." Her presentation featured photos of my property, dramatic claims about environmental hazards, and testimonials from concerned citizens who looked suspiciously like Mountain Vista development employees. The smell of fear-based manipulation hung in the air like cheap cologne as Melissa painted me as an unstable extremist, threatening community safety and my family's century of stewardship as outdated practices endangering modern residents. Her fake tears about fearing for her family's safety would have been convincing if half the audience hadn't witnessed her harassment campaign firsthand. But when my turn came to speak, I simply stood and said, "Thank you all for a century of supporting my family's stewardship of this valley." The gymnasium fell silent as I presented a photo of my great-grandfather building the original dam in 1943, his weathered hands shaping the foundation that kept every property in the valley valuable. Samuel Morrison built this dam in partnership with the federal government, I continued, not just to create Lake Serenity, but to protect future generations from exactly the kind of predatory scheme we're witnessing tonight. Then came the mic drop moment. Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit stood up from the back row. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to inform you that federal investigators have uncovered evidence of organized racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud multiple families in this community. The gymnasium erupted in gasps and murmurs as Agent Martinez outlined the charges. Mountain Vista Development had been systematically targeting multi-generational families through coordinated harassment campaigns designed to force property sales at below-market rates. Marcus's law firm faced disbarment and criminal charges for facilitating the scheme through frivolous lawsuits and illegal bribery attempts. The Morrison family doesn't just maintain critical infrastructure, Agent Martinez continued. They hold federally protected authority over systems that ensure this community's survival. Any interference with their operations constitutes a federal crime. Melissa's public breakdown was spectacular and immediate. "I'm the real victim here," she shrieked, her corporate composure cracking like ice in spring thaw. "These backwards locals don't understand progress. They're stuck in the past while I'm trying to bring civilization to this wilderness." Her racist mask finally slipped completely as she ranted about rural people and their outdated way of life, creating additional evidence for federal prosecutors while destroying any remaining community sympathy. The taste of her panic was visible in the sweat beading on her forehead, despite the gymnasium's cool temperature. Water District Supervisor Jim Peterson stood to provide technical context. "The Morrison family has maintained this dam system with exemplary environmental stewardship for 80 years, he said. "Their expertise is irreplaceable, their authority is federally protected, and their commitment to this community is beyond question." I took the microphone for my final statement. Federal infrastructure protection exists because local politics can't be trusted with critical systems. My great-grandfather understood that future generations might face threats from people who see heritage as an obstacle to profit. The crowd's standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes, the sound echoing off gymnasium walls like thunder announcing the storm's end. Ranch families, longtime residents, and even some newer neighbors who'd been horrified by Melissa's campaign joined in sustained applause that felt like community healing. Channel 7's cameras captured Melissa and Marcus being escorted from the building by sheriff's deputies as federal arrest warrants were served. Their development scheme collapsed in real time as Mountain Vista's investors learned about the criminal investigation through live television coverage. Emma, sitting in the front row, smiled with the satisfaction of someone who'd helped document justice being served. Her social media posts from the meeting went viral instantly, turning our local victory into a national symbol of rural communities successfully fighting predatory gentrification. Mrs. Chen announced her successful election to the county commission, promising to protect multi-generational families from future harassment. The local diner's owner offered free coffee for everyone, and the celebration that followed lasted until midnight. As we walked out into the cool Montana evening, the taste of victory was sweet as mountain air after rain. 6 months later, the Morrison Ranch kitchen smells like fresh coffee and possibility instead of legal documents and stress. Melissa and Marcus are facing federal charges in Denver, their property sold at auction to cover legal fees and restitution payments. Mountain Vista Development collapsed spectacularly, taking down 3 other predatory schemes in neighboring counties. The immediate aftermath was pure community healing. Our monthly town halls became genuine forums for addressing local issues instead of manufactured crises. The federal designation protecting historic properties throughout the valley means no future HOA can threaten multi-generational families the way Melissa threatened us. But the real victory is the Morrison Family Water Stewardship Foundation, established using settlement money from the development company's insurance policies. The foundation teaches rural communities about water rights and federal protections, turning our legal battle into education that helps families across the West defend their heritage. Emma's college scholarship program funds ranch kids studying environmental engineering, ensuring the next generation understands both traditional stewardship and modern conservation science. 23 students receive funding this year, including 3 who return to manage family water systems using cutting-edge sustainable technology. Mrs. Chen's election as county commissioner marked the beginning of political transformation throughout the valley. She's implemented transparency requirements that prevent future corruption while protecting the agricultural heritage that makes our community unique. The taste of honest government is as refreshing as mountain spring water after years of manipulation. The rebuilt barn stands stronger than ever, constructed using original materials salvaged from the demolition plus traditional techniques taught by master craftsmen. Emma's violin practice echoes off new rafters every evening, carrying forward family tradition while pointing toward a future where heritage and progress coexist harmoniously. My romantic subplot reached a happy conclusion when I married Sarah Martinez, the FBI agent who helped expose the conspiracy. She transferred to the regional office and fell in love with both the valley and the man who protected it. Our wedding was the first celebration held in the new barn, bringing together federal agents and ranch families in a union that symbolized justice and healing. But the environmental impact of our victory extends far beyond Whispering Pines. Lake Serenity received federal protection as a demonstration watershed, showcasing how traditional stewardship practices often exceed modern environmental standards. Harvard Law School added our case to their curriculum on rural law and federal infrastructure protection. Emma's future crystallized around environmental law, inspired by watching legal knowledge become a weapon for justice. She'll study water resource engineering at Montana State, with plans to return and modernize our dam systems using renewable energy and smart monitoring technology. The Morrison legacy will continue, with someone who understands both heritage preservation and technological innovation. Knowledge nuggets for families facing similar threats. Water rights often include federal protections that supersede all local ordinances. RICO laws apply to coordinated harassment campaigns even by HOA boards. Environmental lawsuits backfire when the plaintiff is the real polluter. Federal infrastructure protection is your strongest defense against local political pressure. Community benefits multiplied as authentic heritage protection increased property values more than artificial resort development ever could. Eco-tourism built around real ranching history brings visitors who appreciate genuine Western culture instead of manufactured luxury experiences. The local economy thrives on authenticity rather than artificiality. Our annual Heritage Day Festival brings together families from across the region, celebrating rural traditions while addressing modern challenges like climate change and economic sustainability. Last year's festival attracted 15,000 visitors who came to learn about water conservation, sustainable agriculture, and the legal protections that preserve rural communities. The next story is already developing as another community contacts our foundation for help fighting similar gentrification pressure. A small town in Wyoming faces coordinated attacks from a development company using tactics identical to Mountain Vista's playbook. Emma and I will travel there next month to share our experience and legal strategies. The final emotional beat finds me and Emma standing by the rebuilt barn at sunset, looking out over the lake our family has protected for nearly a century. Her violin music carries across water that reflects the golden light of a community that chose heritage over artificial progress, authenticity over manufactured luxury. Dead, Emma says. Great-grandfather's protection worked exactly like he planned. She's right. Samuel Morrison built defenses that lasted 80 years, waiting for the moment when his family would need federal law to defeat local corruption. So drop a comment about your own HOA nightmare. You're not alone in this fight, and communities across America are learning to defend themselves using the legal tools we discovered. Hit that subscribe button to hear how other families are fighting back against gentrification and winning with knowledge, patience, and federal law on their side.